It depends on how you look at your business, man. If you're designed to never give up, you never give up. No matter what hits you in the face, you don't ever give up. So for me, my business is like a little child. It's like my daughter, right? You don't ever give up on your daughter, no matter what, right? And you always stand and fight and create a situation where the business can thrive and survive. The tougher it gets, the harder you hold on to. It's not the time when you go up. More focus, narrow in, zero in, dive deeper, go harder, yeah. So there's no wrong way to entrepreneurs. So I think it's a constant journey. And then it comes to the point where you got to make peace with yourself on the level of discomfort you're willing to put yourself through. So if you tell me you have the opportunity to take an incredible amount of pain for a 1 year period to get somewhere, or a moderate amount of pain for a 5 year period to get somewhere, probably will take the 1 year incredible amount of pain, right? Now this is very subjective, depends individual to individual. If you have high pain tolerance, you're like, yeah, I think I can do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Earthlings and Martians, welcome back to another episode of the My First Business podcast, where I find mentors for my business and put them behind a mic. Each conversation is designed for you, my dear listener, and myself to help us improve our businesses and feel a little less lonely on this turbulent journey. My guest for today's conversation is Nishan Suvarna. Now, what I loved about Nishan the most is that not only is he a book nerd like me, but he's got this uncanny ability to reference what he's read and apply it to the conversations we were having. It was actually fascinating to see his eyes light up at the chance to share what he has learned. For me, Nishan is one of the smartest dudes that's come on the show. He's a lifelong learner and he has a pathological obsession with the truth and an obsession with optimism, and that's exactly who this podcast is for. So, who is Nishan? Nishan is the CEO and Revenue Head of Bluestream, a design and manufacturing company based in Dubai. He's responsible for driving revenue and aims to build and develop products and services focused on accelerating sustainable urbanism. Nishan says it's his calling to do so, and if you happen to live in Dubai, you must have sat on one of their many park benches for sure, or hung out in many of the public spaces that they've built that we all take for granted. Bluestream's mission is to answer the needs of the environment, and according to Nishan, Bluestream is an endeavor to enhance collective consciousness. A biomedical engineer by education, Nishan has now over 17 years of experience in Bluestream, following in his father's footsteps, who founded the company. As a focused refounder, he has been able to grow the company from a 3-member trading organization to a full-fledged design and production facility now in Jebel Ali. Nishan is also a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization and was a founding member of the Vistage Worldwide Inc. Dubai chapter. In this episode, here's what Nishan and I talked about. What we've learned from biographies of successful people and the price they pay, what he learned from the movie Seabiscuit, finding your North Star and your calling, failures when trying to scale a business, how and when to hire senior executives, how Jeff Bezos uses the regret minimization framework, how to manage time while wearing all the possible hats. We discussed his mind-blowing take on the psychology behind pricing. We spoke about what pathological obsession means to him, and much, 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 much more. This conversation is fast-paced, and I think it's just the nature of how quick Nishan thinks while maintaining serious depth in the topics that we explored. This will be an absolute treat for your ears. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Without much further ado, here's Nishan on the EO series of the My First Business podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Entrepreneurs Organization, or EO for short. Since its inception in 1987, EO has evolved into a vibrant global network now boasting 17,000 members across 60 plus countries. Now, just in the UAE, where they've been active since 97, it's especially impressive. They're approaching 150 members, representing an average revenue of $120 million and a combined workforce of 31,000 employees across diverse industries like technology, healthcare, logistics, real estate, jewelry, media services, beauty, food and beverage, and I really could go on and on. EO's strength lies in the support and the opportunities it provides. As an entrepreneur, I understand how solitary this path can be, and that's where EO UAE comes in, offering these invaluable resources through its robust calendar of events, workshops, networking opportunities, and a mentorship program that pairs you with seasoned business leaders. So if you're a business owner in search of a supportive community, rich with networking and structured support through accountability groups and mentors, then EO might be just what you need. Curious about EO? Stay tuned for interviews with EO members on this podcast, including today's guests, just so that you can get a sneak peek of what's in store. For more information and to apply, check out the link in the show notes. Nishan, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
I'm going to put you in the hot seat right away. Right at the start.
Go.
I'll give you three things. You're going to tell me which of them are true and which of them are false.
Okay.
And you can't ask me how I know this. Okay. First thing is you play FIFA when you're taking breaks from work. True or false? Don't answer yet. You've ordered 50 plus books this year, but you've hardly gone through a quarter of them. Or you're very fond of waking up at 4 a.m. to meditate.
Wow. All three are probably true.
I've been doing some snooping.
Wow. You clearly have some heavy research abilities, man.
Oh man, you don't want to know what I know about you.
I still want to do this after that. Cool.
But seriously, 4 a.m. meditation, is that working?
It's been something I've done for a while now.
Yeah.
The duration of meditation is kind of what differs over time, depending on what I'm going through at that point in time. But yeah, I've been doing it for, let's say, not a couple of years, much longer.
Could you wake up at 4 a.m. and play PlayStation instead?
Probably not. I wouldn't be in the right mind frame.
That's awesome. Like, listen, for my preparation, as I've done that, there's a bit that you provided as well. So I'd asked you for your bio, and you had, and it would be a shame if I don't bring this up, because I chuckled a lot when I read this. You put in there a quote from George Orwell.
Yes.
For people that don't know, that's the author of Animal Farm, 1984. I'll mention the quote for my audience, and then I want you to tell me the story.
Sure.
Of why that quote applies to you. So the quote goes, "Any biography is only to be trusted when it reveals something disgraceful." What have you done? What did you do?
So this is way back in freshman year in college. I was in University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, material science engineering major, looking for my first job on campus, trying to make some money. And I happened to have an interview with Dr. Liu at at the Beckman Institute, and we were actually studying mice, epileptic mice, for a gene misrepresentation. So it happened to be that these mice are pre-ordered to make sure that they have that gene misrepresented. And you can't release them out in the open because it's against the law, blah, blah. So my whole job was to do DNA testing, PCR, which everybody knows thanks to COVID now, is what I was literally doing on the mice. And incidentally, one day I ended up killing the test subject along the way. And I was completely shocked by what happened. I thought I just lost my job. It was, because obviously the research lab is in the basement of the building. It's dark, and you come at odd hours because obviously it's not school hours. And it was, I mean, the mouse was trying to get out of the cage, and I just slammed the cage. Unfortunately, the door hit the mice in the face or somewhere near in the neck. It was a she couldn't breathe, and she passed away. And I was destroyed. So I called up my TA, the lab assistant. I called up the professor, and the professor was working, incidentally, at that time. It was 10 p.m. or something. He comes down casually, says, "Oh, what happened?" I said, "I'm really sorry. I probably was sweating and maybe tearful." I said, "No, happens. Don't worry about it. And but do remember, you killed the test subject. Somebody like you could actually ruin the experiment." Incidentally, he had backup mice for everything. So
yeah.
But it was quite something that stuck with me since then. Imagine being tasked with one job and running tests on that test subject, and you end up killing the test subject. That's as bad as it gets.
You have murder on your hands.
Yeah. One way of thinking about it.
Oh, have you come? Does that memory come to you often?
Not really. But I always remembered the way the professor handled it, and that's kind of what stuck with me. He was my first, you could say, first boss in that sense, and he handled it so well, it stuck with me.
How did you take care of yourself after that?
No, I mean, after that, I made sure that I always had, never did anything hasty with the mice. I was always careful, and it was a freak incident. We don't kill animals during testing at all. It doesn't happen, and that's why it was a shock, because I'd seen how the seniors handled the subjects, and it was very meticulous, and so that's why it was a bit of a shocker for me. But it never happened again. I was in the job for a much while longer till I transferred out in Hopkins, so it went smoothly.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that's in the past for you. But just switching gears and while keeping on the same topic about biographies and disgrace and things that have happened in life that were unpreventable too, just a little different twist on it. Every time I read a biography of a successful entrepreneur, which I've stopped doing because I'm just not in the good headspace to read other people's lives and stuff, but they're almost always a cautionary tale. Mm-hmm. Right? Like if you've read Steve Jobs's or Elon Musk's or whoever, Rockefeller's too, it's almost always like they're telling you, don't do what I did. Like I got a lot of success. I've done really well in life. Look at the amazing things I've accomplished with me and my company. But here's all the things that I've lost along the way, and the things that I've given up, and the things that I've sacrificed, and things that I will probably never, ever get back. How do you think about that? How do you reconcile that price for success and the things that you lose along the way when you're just not level-headed enough to go for a straight line?
So, I mean, I guess in the biographies, you got to take in notion that you learn as much the things to do as many of the things not to do. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I think rather than a tale of caution, my perspective on it is if you find your, what you love doing and you love waltzing through it, there's obviously going to be a give and take. If you're aiming at something that's really quite hard to achieve and you're expecting that to come through without a ridiculous level of persistence and hard work, you're not going to be able to achieve that, So I think that's kind of a given. But if you put in that hard work at the same time, there's no way you cannot achieve it. Mm-hmm. Let's say we are in a simulation. Given that perspective, if you're not willing to give in what's required, you won't get what you can make off it. And I think that stands for every entrepreneur out there. And it's if you're clear on your target where you want to go, and if you're willing to pay the price, or simply put, when the why is clear, the how is easy. And the how can be freaking painful, okay? Yeah. And that's the reality of life, I think, because one metric, one way of looking at it is persistence, just dogged persistence, or how much you really want something might really be the only measure of whether you'll achieve it in life, And you could actually take it across professions, obsessions. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I've seen that whether it's sports or art or business, it's almost the same. And like in artists in general, some of it ends up in like, some of my favorite artists have committed suicide. Yeah. But they produced beautiful stuff when they were there. But it was all coming out of pain. Yeah. It's almost like sometimes the price to pay to get your output into the world is a bit too high. So when Alina and I started our business 4 and 5 years ago, one of the questions we regularly ask ourselves is, what is the price we're willing to pay? And we ended up, and we always come around the whole concept of a lifestyle business. Mm-hmm. So what we've never thought of making an impact to the world. It's been a very selfish endeavor so far. And we're young in the business, right? It's been about 3 things for me. One is, can I take a nap in the afternoon? So which is like, do I have the lifestyle and the time flexibility? Number 2 is money. So it's not the first, not the last. 2 is money. And number 3 is creative expression. Because it's a marketing agency, we get to work on creative things. Even this is a part of the creative expression there. And as long as those 3 things are fine, or 2 out of those 3 things are fine, then we're going ahead. Mm-hmm. But then we look around at people, eventually, as everyone does, and you compare yourself. And there's 2 ways to look at it for me, and I'm just jamming about this. One of them is sour grapes. Mm-hmm. Like, oh yeah, they have success, but look, fourth marriage. Can't keep a fucking relationship going for longer than 2 years. And the other part of it is like, am I not trying hard enough to do that too? But like, we keep coming back to the thing that we don't want to follow in the footsteps of anyone that's burnt out and missed out on life. So is it, I guess it's a very hard question and it's an unfair question to ask, but is it possible to not pay a heavy price for good, like really good success?
Depends on your definition of success, right?
Yeah.
What clearly, for example, what you mentioned as the top three things, comfortable, flexible lifestyle, decent earnings and income. I think these are easily possible. I mean, I wouldn't say easily possible. It's possible to achieve them without having to sacrifice a lot. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking at, the most aggressive entrepreneurs out there, let's say Phil Knight, Shoe Dog, aggressive competitor, right?
Yeah.
Winning at all costs. That's his drive. It depends on what your mojo is. If your drive is, like, have you seen the movie Seabiscuit?
No.
Now it's about this small, tiny horse who is the grandson of Man of War, the biggest, mightiest horse to win as many things as possible. Mm-hmm. Seabiscuit is a tiny horse. Well, it's a great movie. You should watch it if you haven't. Yeah. But the story goes behind this this tiny pony who was born off the biggest stud that was there, but because he's tiny, he's always kept as a trainer, and he's taught to fail because he runs next to winners, and in the end slows down so they can win. And the story is about a trainer and entrepreneur who identifies this horse and makes it the winning horse. The thing about Seabiscuit, though, was he was driven by competition. If you just kept him in a corner, he wouldn't do much. You bring him to the main race, and boy, does he run. And he runs to beat, right? So that, I think it entirely depends on your drive, man. And if your drive is for that level of impact or success, however you define it, you will have to be willing to pay the price. But I think it is possible to make peace with that. If you feel that, okay, what I'm looking for is not, entirely driven by blood, sweat, and tears all the time, that maybe I'm okay with something that's less colossal.
Yeah. It's almost like taking current culture of, like, as you mentioned, like, definition of success has become a certain financial, let's say, people have talked about that a lot. We've experimented in the last few months with enoughism, just like what we have is enough. So, exploring Eastern philosophy and going down that route, which I followed for a while, and kind of going with that. But then we can't reconcile living in a city like Dubai, where the energy is very financially motivated. Even though we don't care about the Joneses, we don't try to keep up with anyone on that front. We're happy where we live, we're happy where we drive. And that enoughism also, as just a thing for anyone listening, is also not enough sometimes. Like it truly is like a year by year exploration of what success means to you, right? Has your meaning of success changed from the time you started as an entrepreneur to now?
Yeah, for sure.
How would you contrast it?
I think the reality is you're constantly changing, and you're driven by different things at different points in time. Let's say you're initially just an entrepreneur trying to make the books green, right? Very different mindset. And then eventually when you start to scale the business, a large part of your work is psychology, So here you are when you started the business, total different game plan, total different skill set. But I mean, through time, if you want to move a massive group of people in one direction, it's psychology on steroids. That's what it really is, right? Look at Elon Musk's playbook, right? Massive, unattainable objective put on the map, followed by a game plan that is audaciously ridiculous, requiring copious amounts of hours. So that's kind of the deal. But so having said that, any given point in time, I mean, you could have guys who have aimed for that from the beginning, but I think the game keeps changing consistently. So, and that's another point when you keep changing the goalposts, right? That's why you might consistently be not in a good space if you keep changing the goalposts, where this was good enough, but it's not 3 years from now, it's not 5 years from now. So materialistically driven is always a challenge.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important, rather find your drive or your mojo, as I said it. So if that's what that's more of a pull. You won't stop. And it's not about money, the adulation, fame. It's something else that kind of draws you. And then you keep at it. Because otherwise you got to keep resetting.
Yeah.
You got to keep resetting. And there comes a point where you're like, okay, I hit my BHAG.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah. So. Absolutely. No, we try to, and then thank you for that perspective, because it's confirmation that, that kind of changes with your requirements internally as well, or where you are chronologically in your business. Like if you look at, or if I talk to someone who's, let's say 50, 60 years old, they're usually the group of people that would be telling me, don't worry about the money. Just do good work.
Yeah.
Just do good. Don't worry about the money. Do good work. Then you talk to 20-year-olds and all they can talk about is money.
Yeah.
And I'd rather take advice from people with gray hair than with the young ones. So we're trying to keep that in check and have like a constant check-in between Alina and I. So it's good to hear that perspective. But
I mean, good way to think about it is, have you seen the movie 3 Idiots?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It coincides with, I think, Steve Walsh's book, In Search of Excellence.
Okay.
The great coach. I mean, you should read it.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Okay.
No, I think it's not In Search of Excellence. Sorry. It's, I forget. It was the end or results take care of themselves. Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So just keep getting excellent in what you do.
Yeah.
And the results do take care of themselves, man.
Yeah.
It's shockingly true. And that's the basis of 3 Idiots, right? That's why I brought it out, right?
Yeah.
And I think that really is key. As long as you make sure at your task at hand, you are literally at the top, whatever, 10%, 5%, 1%, if you can achieve it.
Absolutely.
The financial side of it will take care of itself.
In fact, like just before we started, I was talking to my partner here at the studio. We're discussing the exact same thing, because there was a time where we'd be, to get the studio up and famous and running and use so much, we'd be doing the chasing to the market, right? But ever since we've just turned the focus inward and not being aggressively outward, things are just falling on our plate. Like different kinds of deals are coming through, different conversations are happening. And it's only because there's been a heavy focus on what happens that's within our control, the service that we provide here. And then everything else kind of just like starts coming on top without us chasing anything. So it's a good reminder to just do the thing well. Whatever you're doing just do it to your best ability, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to switch gears now. I'm going to talk about your business. I've had the pleasure of talking to a ton of guests here, a lot from EO as well, and some of them would happily say they're serial entrepreneurs. And while I find that impressive to start and run multiple businesses, it's not easy to do. But what I also find impressive is someone who can do one thing for a long time, which is like, I find it completely the focus needed to build that thing and take it to level after level after level, and for long periods of time, and survive through multiple, let's say, recessions, market trends. Like that says something for me, because I was talking about Dr. Sasan before we started recording too, and he's giving me these stats of like what the average age of companies now is, and it's ridiculously low.
True.
So anyone who crosses like the 8 to 10 to 15, 20 year mark for me is like, whoa. So I want to ask you, like, how it almost feels like your current business is like your calling. Would you say like this is your calling? When did you first realize that this is your calling? Was it from day one? Did it come 10 years after? And you can tell the audience like how long the business has been around. And,
sure. So the business has been around for almost 25 years. I joined about 17 years ago. When I joined, it was just my father and another 2 people on the team. And, since then we've vertically integrated. We don't just trade, we design, manufacture the standard set of elements, which is outdoor furniture, waste management elements, architectural elements, and the like, public design, urban design. So when can I say it was actually my calling? I think I think over time you kind of realize what your North Star is, or what is an ideal case situation for what drives you, right? Like I mentioned earlier. And if you were to observe, and if you start to see that it is to build organizations, motivate people in a certain direction, and you can't start to realize the power of an organization is in doing that. And then that's kind of how I identified that this is what I want to do. And I am not actually driven by the profit motive or the revenue metric. It's more on impact, right? But this is very subjective, right? People are driven by different things. I might be driven by something else 10 years from now, right? A lot of difference there. So that goes to your other part of your question around serial entrepreneurship, right? For me, it's about, I know all eggs in one basket, but taking care of that damn basket really well, okay? And again, this is a subjective thing. For me, that works better. More focus, you dive deeper. In your particular arena of expertise, you are truly unmatched, right? And that includes, in today's day and age, geographical expertise, market segment-wise expertise, customer understanding, nuances of leading people in this region, because demographically people are different, especially when you're in an ethnically cultural melting pot like Dubai, right? So that's the other aspect of why single business, possibly looking at synergistic product lines, but really focused on an area that makes sense to us. And that kind of drives back to our core purpose, which is when we decided way back, we'd only have products that had bettered environments, that improved the environment. And the first product that we had was the litter bin. And so we had a lot of opportunities in the middle, trying to look at products that we could sell and trade and make money off of. And we said, well, do we really want to do that? And if we don't want to do it, then we probably shouldn't do it. And that's how we came up on the simple basis is every product we look at, or segment or product line, if it betters the environment, that's what we want to do. So enhancing urban environments, not forest environments or some aquatic environments, right? Very particular human environments. And that's what we do. And if there's a product that does that, there's a line that does that, that's exciting. That's what we want to do.
So you don't have any underwater litter bins yet?
Not yet. I know there's a lot of garbage floating on the surface of the ocean, but we haven't.
We can teach the fish to
not litter. I don't think they litter, man.
No, take our litter and then like put it in the right containers.
Yeah.
Do that. But in this 17-year journey then for you, have you ever come to a point where you wanted to walk away from it, where you wanted to either shut it down, sell it, move on to something else?
Never.
Really? No other opportunities came to you, or were you just good at saying no?
There are other, there are always other opportunities, but it depends on how you look at your business, man. If you're designed to never give up, you never give up.
Yeah,
that's it. No matter what hits you in the face, you don't ever give up. But second thing is, the most difficult time probably was COVID, right? Second thing is how you look at your business. For me, my business, or our business, because it's the team involved with it, is like a little child. It's like my daughter, right? You don't ever give up on your daughter, no matter what, right? And that's how I look at it. And you always stand and fight and create a situation where the business can thrive and survive. Of course, the difficult part is sometimes you take decisions that could put your daughter in trouble, and you're like, shit, I might have made her terminally ill. And that's ridiculous. That's when the really hard self-blame part of it comes out. But again, it's the relationship you have with your ventures, which can actually change over time. But my natural tendency is, the tougher it gets, the harder you hold on to it. It's not the time when you go up. Never.
Yeah.
It's in fact, that's the time when you go more focus. Narrow in, zero in, dive deeper, go harder. Yeah.
Yeah. We've gotten there a few times already, and it's only been 4 or 5 years where I like your analogy about it being your child. Sometimes it's a baby.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's crying, it's kicking and screaming, and you don't know why. Does it want milk? Does it want a pat on the back? Like, does it want to burp? Like, what's wrong with you?
The child.
Right? But you can't just dump your child. It's not responding. But sometimes we want to, and that sounds really bad. But sometimes, here's the thing. When we got into this business, it's a gateway business. So having a marketing agency is not rocket science. You don't need to be very specialized or qualified to start one. There's no capital required. It's just your laptop and you. And it's fairly easy to get your first few clients, right? When you start this, just in your own friends network, you can have 5 clients. So in that case, it was really the turn from not being an entrepreneur to being an entrepreneur wasn't that visible. It was almost like I used to do the other work on a laptop. Now I'm doing this other work. This is also email. That is also email. It's email-driven work that we do. And it felt like a gateway business. Like we got into this and we started questioning like, okay, now that we're in entrepreneurship, we've taken the risk, we've quit the salary world. We have to grow this. We have to hire, we have to train, we have to build systems, process, SOPs. We're doing all of that. What if we did this for something else, knowing that this was just the easiest thing for us to start? But lately, we've been falling back in love with it. There is a period of time, there was a year or so, we were not in love with it at all. And now we've come back. Both of us have been, we're so excited for 2024. These are all the things we're going to do. Like creative problem solving is one of the reasons I do business, right? Like it's going to suck sometimes. Your child's going to misbehave sometimes.
Yeah.
Forget you making it ill. Your child is intentionally going to misbehave with you. You're going to tell it to do one thing. It says, no, I don't want to have my milk.
True.
So yeah, we're finding ways to, tame our child right now. But I've also kind of dropped my need to be seeing myself as a serial entrepreneur. I always had this dream, like I'll have a holding company, marketing agency be one part of it, then I'll have another one, then I'll have this, and I'll, be doing deals left, right, and center. What's exciting to me now, and which is why I love talking to you right now, is to go back to that one thing and the allure of depth, like you talked about, like going deep versus broad has always suited me in other areas of life too. So I'm like, why not bring that back as well into this? You talked about, intentionally or unintentionally making your child sick. What happened? What are the different scenarios that you went through that you feel like you gave your business a challenge that you could, I wouldn't say like blame yourself for, but was within your control, and how did you kind of get out of it? If you have like an instance or two of when that happened.
I mean, there's several instances. I think we opened up an office in India that didn't work out, and we had to shut it over COVID. We had an open office in Qatar where the partner went rogue. We had an office in Oman that we had to shut down. And I think it's more the journey of scaling up, if you're looking to be of a certain size, it's easier. But if you want to take your ship out of the harbor into the high seas, now it's a game changer, right? And that demands much more of you than you'd expect. And that's kind of what happened to me. I did not expect it to be as challenging as it turned out. Doesn't mean I'm not up for the challenge, but obviously considerably harder than I imagined it to be. And it happens consistently when you're scaling up your team, getting new team members on board, and the whole idea behind understanding how crucial your extremely subjective knowledge is for the business, that nobody from outside, no matter what kind of businesses they've run and what scale, can understand those nuances. And I learned that the hard way. It doesn't matter which MBA school you're from. It doesn't matter how many years of experience or groups of people you've led. Fundamentally, for an entrepreneur, nobody has your kind of knowledge. To build systems and processes to be able to relay that knowledge to the next team is quite difficult, especially if you're creatively driven and you don't think process-wise. And that has been one of the challenges. And of course, there are multiple ways of, as they say, there's no wrong way to entrepreneur. There never is, and there never will be.
Yeah.
You have charismatic guys, you have, bookish guys. It doesn't matter, right? Yeah. So there's no wrong way to entrepreneur. So in my case, I had to actually find a way of bridging the gaps of how we actually scale the business. What parts of me can I scale up? What parts of me are so shit that I should probably not bother with them? But I think it's a constant journey, and then it comes to the point where you got to make peace with yourself and the level of discomfort you're willing to put yourself through.
Yeah.
Right. And that's very subjective. For me, time is the ultimate currency. So if you tell me you have the opportunity to take an incredible amount of pain or a 1 year period to get somewhere, or a moderate amount of pain or a 5 year period to get somewhere, probably will take the 1 year incredible amount of pain, right? Now, this is very subjective. Depends individual to individual. If you have a high pain tolerance, you're like, yeah, I think I can do it.
Yeah.
And also depends on how bad you want it and why you want it. So that's your why. So that's the mindset I have, where sometimes, you'll have to keep taking gambles where you slip and fall. But you got to make sure that your learning rate is really high up there, and you pick up whatever you can as quickly as you possibly can to steer the boat into the right direction and back out into the seas.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I want to take a moment to share something that's really, really close to my heart. As you know, this podcast isn't just a series of episodes. It's you and I getting mentored by the wisest of the wisest. Each episode is crafted with care, aiming to bring not just stories, but wisdom and insight into the fascinating and sometimes lonely world of entrepreneurship. This is more than just a podcast. It's a personal mentorship session recorded on camera for all of us to learn and grow together. And this is where you come in. If any episode has resonated with you, your subscription or your vote means the world to me. Every subscription lights a fire inside of me and fuels me to keep delivering content that I wish had existed before I started this podcast 2 years ago. So I humbly ask for your support. Please hit pause now and find that subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening to this. It's a small action for you, but it means everything to me. Thank you for being a part of this community and for your support and for choosing to walk this path with me. Stay curious and stay inspired. Thank you so much. No, there's so much to unpack in what you said in there, because one of the things that I want to mention, we're looking to see if we can bring a general manager on board to ease the burden for Alina and me in exactly what you say, time, to ease a time burden for us. And we haven't put in the words that you have, like the nuance of the subjectivity that you need. In fact, there was a guest on the show now, I can't remember, but he said, he once hired a corporate turnaround expert to help with the business. And he's like, he did turn it around. Upside down. It's an MBA who turned his business upside down. So we're starting to think about this general manager and what they would do in their job description. And from that is like a self-study on our own job description and writing that and seeing what parts we want to give away. But there's always a feeling of like, will they have the same love, care, subjectivity, nuances as us? Any advice for people that are founders looking for their first executive hire or senior executive? Because right now we run a team of like, we are the executives and everyone else kind of has very fixed jobs. But yeah, anything I should watch out for when looking for these?
I mean, there's the textbook route, which you'll hear a lot about, right? Follow an interview methodology, have a score sheet ready. And you definitely, those do work. Top grading, scorecards, they minimize your chances of error, increase your probability of finding the right hire. I think the values fit is super critical. You don't quite realize that an organization is like an individual. It has its own personality. And in more cases than one, for example, in your case, it's probably a combination of you and your wife's personality or the magic that you have together. You need somebody who fits that, right? So the culture and value fit is vital. And something another EO member, Sanjay Raghunath, keeps telling me is always go back and keep asking yourself every month if you would still hire that guy. Every single month. And if the answer is a no, pull the cord. But you cannot not do it. And this is where we recently learned this too. After 1971, the number of aeroplane accidents dramatically dropped. Okay. And that's primarily because they introduced simulators. Okay. Nothing works like a real world situation. You can't help but do it to learn how the hell you get better at it. Okay. And that's the reality of it. So you could follow all the methodologies that are there. And this is my 2 cents. You could follow all the methodologies on there. You could do the culture fit. You come back and keep asking yourself, okay, do I have a operating process that keeps in check whether he's hitting his KPIs and his downlines are, and you could even go back and keep asking them if it's a good fit every month or not. But at some point you got to do it, and you only learn by really doing it.
Yeah,
because these methodologies don't take into consideration the human element, and you're a human. There are emotions associated with this hire, with what this hire does to your team, to your firm, right? And human behavior is not linear, to say the least, right? It's not like, situation A, so this happens. You hope so, and you try your best to be as level-headed and equanimous, composed as you can be. But reality, that's kind of like where the spanner in the works is.
Yeah.
So when you really do it, you walk the talk, and you kind of realize this part is difficult for me, and that part isn't, and so on.
Yeah.
It's the only real way to do it.
True.
Yeah, but minimize the damage that it can do in case it's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of wishful thinking that usually goes around, and you shouldn't do that. You should try not to do that, because nobody really knows the right answer, right? Yeah. Did I pull the plug too early? Was it too late? I should have given more time. Should I not given more time? You're going to go through that in your head like 50 million times.
Yeah.
Right? So I would say you got to do it to learn how to do it.
Yeah.
And that's going to burn a bit.
I know. I feel like the first time, like, you shouldn't put all your eggs in your first risk that you take, like bringing the first executive on in the business. And this is why we haven't done it so far, because we're too scared to do it. But only when we do it, we realize what the right way to do it. It's like the law of large numbers, right? If you flip a coin 10 times, you might have like 9 heads and 1, but often enough, it'll turn out to be 50-50. And you can do that with like all the other hires in your business. You can have, mass scale hire, but you're never going to have a large amount of executives hired within 1 year to find out what fits your bill, right? It's such a highly leveraged position that having a bad apple on the lower tiers is not as hurtful as having a bad apple
on the upper tiers, yeah.
In the upper tiers, right? And because that would spread much more widely. And I don't want to destroy my baby, I don't want to introduce a virus into your own child's body.
So that's something that I've tried to do.
Yeah.
The usual suggestion is an L1 every 3 months, an L1 or a key leader, key exec every 3 months. I've brought on board more than that at a given point in time. It can be quite painful.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, it's also depends on the situation of the business, right? If the demands of the business at that point required you to bring on expertise that might be considerably beyond you.
Yeah.
Again, so this is so subjective, man,
Yeah.
Situations differ, opportunities differ. Everything has a time, there's a time risk associated with it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the reality of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure.
For example, look at venture-backed VC-backed venture, for example, right?
Yeah.
They bring on a lot of leaders at simultaneously at a point, because you have a small window when everybody else is looking at the same opportunity to go all in at it. But bootstrapped entrepreneurs, it's a different game, because it's your own money.
Yeah.
And you're putting sometimes yourself at risk financially, but your family's lifestyle at risk potentially, and killing your legacy potentially, right?
What I think about most is, first of all, survival, right? Like as you said, like when you take the risk, make sure there is like an undo button or a redo button for you. And all the decisions that we make in the first, I've said to Lena, in the first 8 years of our business are going to be focused on survival, not so much on scaling. Because if we can get to that point, get to the 8, we'll have so many, like you said, learning rate. Our learning rate will be so high.
Yeah.
right? At least so then we can take larger risks and a bit. But it's all about, for this time, if anything threatens the survival of the business, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Even if it has a
Never
1% chance of going. When I used to be a foreign exchange trader back in my past, I was reading books from Nassim Taleb, and he says the job of a trader is to show up the next day. So basically, don't ever take a position so large in the markets that you can go bust. Your only job is to come again next day, because over a long period of time, you will make those compound returns. So let's talk about risk taking. You come across very thoughtful. I like what you said in there, that you should have, alluding to that worst case scenario mapped out in your head. What's your philosophy on risk taking? How do you assess a new opportunity? How do you decide to go all into a new idea? I mean, we can talk about Qatar, India, and Oman, or any other ways. Like, how has your risk taking philosophy kind of changed over the last 17 years, if it has?
So a large part of the way I approach risk is driven by my first mentor, which is my father, right, in the business. And he was always very careful on the way that he was taking decisions, very mindful, and always making sure that you never bet the company. And you never bet the company on any decision, typically. And not typically, ever.
Yeah.
But over time, what you kind of start to realize is good is actually the enemy of great, right? If you hit a good point, you get complacent, right? And if you're not, let's say, financially motivated or really driven to get somewhere, you kind of just hang in there, right? For me, that turning point came when I realized that, okay, what actually drives me is impact. I want to make sure that the venture is actually going to have an impact on people's lives, on the region, so on and so forth. And that kind of turned the risk appetite to a much different level. But traditionally speaking, I have to be honest, some of my mentors, including my father, have been considerably more aggressive risk takers than myself. I have had to, possibly because of overthinking or analyzing, you try to do your best. Versus many times, what they say, successful people are not good decision makers. They don't make good decisions. They make decisions good, right? So you already take a decision.
I like that.
Shit, screwed up. Then you go out and you fix it, right? Because, the general understanding is hesitancy results in too many lost opportunities, right? So you kind of try to take a decision and then you go out there and try your best to make it good. And guess what? A large part of the times, you do much better overall for a longer period with that mindset. Standard-wise, you could go through a lot of frameworks. Bezos' regret minimization framework is a good one. When you take in a big decision, do you know about Bezos' regret minimization framework?
No, tell me about it.
So it's just, I think it goes way beyond him, but he's the most popular guy it's attributed to. So you just look at 10, 20 years down the horizon, would I regret not making this decision? And if the answer is a resounding yes, then you take it. And there are other ones depending on high impact, low variance, low impact, high variance, which is based on everyday decision making, where if you make it, is the decision going to have an high impact on the business, or on you, or high impact on earnings if it's a new venture, or something that has low impact by high variance. And a good example of that, or high impact, high variance, which is like making payroll, right? Making payroll doesn't actually have a big impact. I mean, it has a big impact if you don't make it, right? But it has low variance. By making it, you're not going to gain much, right? That's something that you can delegate. But there are decisions that have high impact, high variance, where you need to be involved primarily, and those are kind of those decisions that, where you would take a call on whether to go in or not versus delegate.
Yeah.
So you could go through a lot of decision making frameworks, but yeah.
Yeah, can we talk about some of them? Because I'm a nerd about that kind of stuff. I'm not very good at remembering the exact matrices, but my general philosophy is, for example, wearing masks in COVID. It just made complete sense to me because if you look at worst case scenario, you don't wear a mask. Pros are you have freedom, you can breathe. Worst case, you die.
Yeah.
You wear a mask, you still have a chance of dying, but considerably lower than not wearing a mask. And the con is irritation, having to wear something, having to remember to wear something, or breathing your own carbon dioxide. But compared to the other alternative, like it just made complete sense, you know. And those are the kind of things I think about. Like when I risk taking is the other thing you said is like don't bet the company on it.
Yeah,
I don't ever want to take something on that requires me to like do a second mortgage on the house.
Yeah.
And I've heard stories of people do that, right? And good for them. And also mention like your father and his generation. Man, they were built differently, weren't they?
Yeah.
Like those guys were built, those guys and girls built differently. Like the things our parents have been up to, like the more stories I find, I'm like, you did what? You what? Can't even think of doing that. You know, we're city kids. You know, we're a nice, comfortable, cozy life, born and raised in UAE. You know, we haven't seen the kind of things that they've been up to, right? But what other decision-making matrix comes to mind for you if I were just to put you on the spot? It can be with risk-taking, can be with... Let's do one for like prioritization.
Prioritization?
Let's like you have 5 ideas, you got to pick one to work on.
Yeah, there's a whole simple one. Important, urgent, not important,
the
not urgent.
Eisenhower matrix.
Yes, Eisenhower matrix, yeah. So, I mean, there are a whole bunch that you could go through depending on the decision.
Yeah.
But yeah. But that's a good one for delegation, to be honest.
Yeah, I've not fully found. You know what the problem I have with that one is? I'm a bad predictor of the impact. So it's impact versus effort, right? In that one, like what will have a high impact versus effort, and anything that's high impact. What is it? Is it impact effort? No.
The one that I spoke about was impact and variance of impact.
Is that also like?
Yeah, it's another framework where, but impact and effort is a different one, but I can't seem to place it. High impact, high variance is when there's a decision that absolutely has no impact, no variance, but has a high impact, like payroll that I mentioned.
Yeah.
But that works quite well if you're if you're with your team and you have to see what kind of decision needs to move to whom.
Yeah.
And that kind of makes more sense.
Yeah. I think the other one is like
impact versus effort.
Important versus urgent. So
that's the Eisenhower matrix.
Yeah.
That's Eisenhower.
That's a prioritization.
Yeah.
So that one, I have challenges figuring out importance and urgency, and I'll be like very, very open and honest about. There are some things that let's say on your task list, you're sitting on a Sunday with your coffee and you've made your task list, and you have all these other ideas that you have parked in the ideas bin. You bring them out. You're like, I don't know what to do with them. You whip out the Eisenhower matrix, like, which one of these is important, which one of them are urgent. For me, anything that I came up with is important and it's urgent. So how do you, let me phrase it this way. How do you kill your own ideas? Because as an entrepreneur, that's a disease we all have, right? We have more ideas than the time that we have to execute them, or resources. It's
so interesting because the first part of the journey, right, as an entrepreneur, you got to pay attention to each one of these, brain shots that you get.
Yeah.
Because you got to go run, do it. Right?
Yeah.
You can't waste an inspiration, as they call it. But
I have that disease.
But the fact of the matter is, man, as you grow and as you scale, that becomes your bane, because. I forget who called it, but they call it killing your darlings.
Yeah.
Right? So you pen down 10 things that you got to do, and you kill 9, and you only do 1.
So hard to do that.
So it's hyper focus, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of the battle that I have with myself as well. And it was a critical matter with my, with my L1 team last quarter. And they kept bringing it up to my attention. It's not happening. Have you read the book, The One Thing? I forget.
I'm scared of reading it. Honestly, it's been recommended to me a million times, and it keeps showing up on my feeds. It scares me because it's going to change me because I'm not like that yet.
True, but it might be. On your entrepreneurial journey, it might be the next year.
I think so. I think it fits well at the theme of next year for me.
Might have to be the next year.
Yeah. This is a calling. The one thing for sure now.
Yeah. So, I think so. Then it moves into focus, man. You need to identify really what's the one thing that's going to move the needle out of the 10 things that you've written down.
Yeah.
And you go do that one thing. And you come back, pull up the list again the next day and go after the next one thing that's going to move the needle.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be a lot of things that are not going to move the needle, but they just seem like really important.
They do.
But
they do all these flashy objects of ideas and inspiration. Yeah, but I think the biggest challenge at some point, as you said, around scaling is saying no more often than you say yes.
Yeah, I mean, scaling on Guru 1 literally says, in your entrepreneurship journey, there's a point until which you have to say only yes to everything. And then it suddenly switches for you to be able to say no to a lot of things and yes to the specific things that make a lot of sense to you.
Yeah, we're in that transition right now from the yes to everything, including the type of client that we take on. So we were not very, we didn't have standards. we just took on whatever came our way, and now it's more selective in the sense that we know what breaks us, right? What kind of client breaks us over the long term, whether it's team morale, whether it's margins, whether it's process breaking over a certain type of client. And we're very carefully vetting now, or at least delaying start dates. For in the past, it would be like, yes, and now. It's turned to, no, not you, yes, but not right now. I need to set up the foundations for you to be there. So that transition is, this is what growing up feels like. Yeah. A little growth spurt. But we spoke about your father in there too. Want to talk about that for a bit. There's obviously a tendency for all of us to kind of chart our own path, but at the same time, there are things that we should take. What are some of the things, or what are the footsteps? A two-part question. What are the footsteps of your father that you have followed, almost like one for one, and what are some of the things that you challenge? And you say, you know what? I like that you did that, but that's not going to be my way of doing it. Is there a contrast? Is there a big list on either side?
You know what they say? It's the story of the father is embedded in the son. And there's no way to veer around that. So there's probably a ton of things that I've taken from. Very difficult for me to list all of them down. And the entrepreneurial drive, but most important thing is just being an incredibly good human. And he would keep saying that I'm an accidental businessman, right? And he would always do that, always say that, and our bankers say that. And I knew it from the way that he behaved, and that's something that the firm has kept very strong going, right? Integrity is one of our values. We walk the talk no matter what. Our suppliers know way before time. Everybody, all of our stakeholders, very aware of how we function. I think that's, as I have aged, I've realized how actually invaluable that was, right? The man's reputation precedes him as being just this impeccable gentleman, right? And that's something that I have always carried with me as deeply. And I realized that's much stronger than the entrepreneurial drive and the ridiculous work appetite, you could just put umpteen number of hours and you wake up the next day and you're ready to go. Like, this is the 4 a.m. drive, right?
Yeah.
So those are the other things. There's too many to even list, I'd say. Difference from him, I'm probably more academic, right? Probably more bookish versus he is more on the fly and get a sense for things. And there's no wrong or right way. That's why I said you need to find your own wavelength as you waltz through your journey, right? I think that's the part that I differ from a little bit. He's not a meditation heavy kind of dude.
Yeah.
But I think the strongest part is just being an extremely humble, down to earth, thorough gentleman.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing I picked up from him. Always true.
There's some similarities for us then in that case, because my father's also very scrappy in the sense that, doesn't think, just does the thing.
Yeah.
He takes on responsibility very easily for him, his family, does it humbly. And at the same time, I'm like you, I'm like bookish. So if there's a decision to make, I'll be like, let me remember what book I read about this particular topic. Or let me talk to 4 people about what am I thinking? Maybe I'll start a podcast. And he just did the damn thing, they were just rolling up their sleeves a lot more than I do. But in essence, as his character, also the humility, gosh, and you probably have this too. Some days, randomly you'd be sitting and you'd find out a story about something he did when he was 17. And you'd be like,
what?
I was just playing PlayStation when I was 17. And
True.
You're getting on an oil tanker.
Yeah, I mean, but that would be my dad's story, super inspiration, right? So lost his dad when he was, I think, in 5th grade. Through school, he peddled a bike delivering milk through houses, him and his brother. And my grandma, the only one who reared 5 kids, came here on a boat, on a ship. Okay, let's say. Yeah, he came here on a ship. And that's kind of how he started. And from Kuwait and then onwards to the UAE. So his story is super inspirational that way. And compared to that, I look like a rugrat. So.
Hey, same thing. I think your dad might have on the same ship. Because
Quite possibly.
He was on a cargo boat ship hiding in the engine room.
Wow.
Because he was being he was not supposed to be here. It was 1971. It was before the country was formed.
Oh my good Lord.
There's I remember he was telling me, he went up from Pakistan to Afghanistan, sold pearls there. Found their way to Iran.
Wow.
Around Iran and Bandar Abbas, friends of his told us, hey, there's this new place called Sharjah. Do you want to go? Apparently there's jobs there. My dad's like, okay. How do we go there? It's we just got to hide here. And they docked in Sharjah, it was, I think, and they waited in the engine room for a few hours because there were security dogs kind of going around because the British were still here around the time. They still owned or took control of the land. And they stayed there, sweated in the engine room, got out, ran towards the closest mosque that they heard.
Wow.
And the imam who was leading the prayer, after the prayer, he turns, looks around, he's like, you guys are not from here. So stuff like that, I was playing PlayStation, man. I wasn't doing any of this kind of stuff, right?
True,
These guys are built differently.
Totally.
Is he still active in the business?
Not so much.
Yeah.
He comes in once in a while.
Yeah.
It is Will and it is Will, but
yeah.
Accidental
businessman. I like that. I wanted to ask you, switching gears, memento style again. Have you ever written down a job description for yourself?
Ugh, that's a good one. Actually, no. I may not have done one for myself, but for every single hat I have worn, I have done. Yeah.
How many hats are you wearing right now?
Ooh, this is not a good question.
How many hats should you be wearing and how many are you wearing?
I should be wearing possibly 1 and I'm probably wearing 4 right now.
Okay, how do you decide then, again, this is going back to the Eisenhower thing, but spending your time when you're wearing multiple hats, let's go micro instead of macro, week to week. How do you plan your week out, knowing that you have these 4 responsibilities?
I mean, you delegate as much as you can. And man, the reality is
delegating is work too, right? It's not you've just given it. You have to think about what to give to someone and then follow up if it's been done.
Yes.
And then check the quality of what's been done.
Delegation was abdication. But, I mean, a quick way to think about it is you got to let some fires burn, man.
Ooh.
Right. So that's how it is, depending on what your priority is.
Oh, I like that.
If you're going to go out there and try to douse every fire, I got news for you. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Because they're going to come. There's more fires right after those, right? So how am I approaching it right now? The number one thing. A lot of those fires don't move the needle, especially when you understand who your critical customers are, what really matters for them and for the business, and you need to find out what moves the needle and focus on there, because that's kind of the way I'm looking at it right now. And I mean, that's not to say that. I think it's the reality is that I'm blessed to have a really good team, right? And a large part of the workload, those guys manage like magic, right? And I might be manning a few more hats than needed, but these are hats that maybe some of them would argue you could burn tomorrow and we won't have an impact, right? It might be just me holding on to it, saying,
It's
"Oh,
like
we really
ego.
need this function," kind of, and they're like, "Well, it has no impact on the business," which could be the case. And I might be thinking, "No, but it has an impact 5 years from now or 3 years from now," and they might be like, "Yeah, well, let's see, 3 years is a long time." So it's a bit of that, but the reality is, I think that's the reality of it. The real big reason why I can focus on the number one thing is a large part of the team is quite capable of managing these things, fighting those fires during that period of time. That's what really helps.
So when you sit and do your weekly planning, I'm guessing do you do a weekly plan of like what you're going to do for the coming week, or do you just have like that North Star in your head, like,
oh shit, no.
that's my one thing and I'm just going to do whatever requires to move that and I'll figure it out day by day?
No, man. To be honest, I guess this is again very subjective. For me, everything needs to be calendarized, right? And this wasn't easy for somebody like me, because I wasn't, the creative kinds aren't really organized.
Yeah.
But
Agree. That's like staring into my soul.
But for me, calendarizing, man, that's like the number one thing, and do it as best as possible.
Then do you move things around on a daily basis? Because like obviously things happen, fires come out, calls happen, health, family, whatever things come. Do you constantly find yourself like switching something forward, bringing something forward?
Yeah, well, see, I think all of us are, depending on what we're dealing with at that point in time. For me, more and more I realize is I need to be doing a lot of deep work.
Yeah.
The penalty for context switching is too high at my level.
Yeah.
And that means I need to dedicate chunks of time period for tasks that really will help the org right now. Yeah. And a large part of that is obviously pre-scheduling. There's I don't do weeks. I don't do a week. I try to do a month or more.
Okay.
Right. We kind of calendarize our meeting times till next December. Right. So we're kind of aware. Without that, you wouldn't be as optimized with time. And of course, just before every week, there's going to be some changes. But you stick as best as you can to your calendar, because that's a large part of the belief is routines set you free, right? Routines actually set you free. And how much ever you might think, this routine is a rut. No. Yeah. That routine is plugged here and here subconsciously, and you just do it consistently, and it's setting you free. Because the rest of the time, you're free to think, move, and act on those key big decision points. Yeah. I mean, almost sounding I'm preaching, but I'm not doing this fully yet myself, okay? Yeah. But the reality is it's a journey. But that's that I do believe is what works best for me. I can't say it works best for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's got their style. Like Alina is very much an inspiration for me in terms of time organization.
My wife is too for me. Tasha's the one who's got me down to this.
Yeah, she's got the things in the calendar. She's very she doesn't care about how she's feeling at that time. If she said from 9 to 11 I'm doing deep work, she will do the deep work. For me, it's more like I wanted to do something, a creative task for the business from 9 to 11, but I'm not feeling it. So I start doing other things. I'm not as and every time I've done a routine, it has set me free because it removes any decision making. Yeah. From a certain day, from a certain hour, and the context switching is aside that, but even just reducing the amount of decisions we make in a day.
But there are some hacks around it. I mean, you probably see a lot, depending on your energy, because you got to be cognizant of your energy, right?
Yeah, which I am like fully aware of, and I use that to my disadvantage sometimes.
I use that to my disadvantage.
Yeah.
That's that.
So, but yeah, how do you work around that? Like,
Yeah, so that's what I would say. I was just sharing with you that might be the reason if you're going to overload certain part of the day when you're not really at your best with tasks that tax you, then you can expect you to not be able to be tuned in to do it. And you could also work on stuff like pamper yourself, go to the cafe, go to a nice cafe you haven't checked out, and then you're more zoned in to try and do it. So stuff like that.
Yeah.
Actually,
that makes sense, because I've tried to do that like intuitively once or twice, and it's worked.
I mean, you could do it. Who is it? I think it's called I call it wandering days. You pick one day of the week.
Yeah.
You're out of the office.
Yeah.
And you go check out a different cafe.
I like that.
I think it was the CEO of Twitter, the previous
Dorsey.
All
right. Wandering days. I like that. Yeah. This is what I complained to Alina that some of my strategic things that I want to do don't happen, because when I end up doing them, they are, as you said, like those deep work things that you can't do anything else, and 4 hours go by without, let's say you've moved a bit of a needle on that certain thing. And I tell her the complaint I give to her, I'm like, this is why I don't do them, because like once I start doing it, I can't, like, this is so deep and it's much larger than I ever thought, that where do I find 4 hours a day with so many hats that you wear, I wear? A 4-hour block in the calendar is significant, right? Do you end up like your deep work blocks, are they certain timed?
So I'll be honest, the last 2 quarters, we had a big revenue dip. I had to get back into the sales with the sales team and bring it back up. So I totally smashed all of my deep work days.
Right.
So this is the first, Q1 of next year is the first time that I'm going to reinstitute, or actually next week onwards. I'm excited.
Yeah.
It's the first time I'm probably going to institute some deep work days.
Nice.
But then if it's a day, it's a day, you do it from morning to evening, and then you do what best you can. But if you have tasks as daunting as what you explained, it's going to take time, man. The usual thing is, big task, break it to small task, do the small task.
Yeah, that's what I end up doing is like the quantity of tasks that I want to finish. But as you said, like what really moves the needle is the big difficult, or would they say eat the frog?
Yeah,
like
eat the frog, exactly.
Eat the frog, and I don't eat the frog.
Yeah.
I eat the chicken wings. They're nicest.
Anything but the frog.
Yeah, but it's a good reminder. Like these kind of things are good reminders as well. And both Alina and I, and I want to talk to you if you have this as well in the business too. Sometimes we get into groupthink. So when we get into not just decision making where we don't see the other perspective, even our habits we kind of pick up from each other, because we're husband wife, plus we're running business together, and weeks go by without us realizing we're not doing the right thing in terms of our habits and stuff like that too. So that's kind of dangerous too. And sometimes we're just vocally telling each other to like, come on, pick yourself up. How does that work for you? Do you have like a partnership relationship in the business level?
So my sister is also in the business. So she's the one that drives the architectural side of it, speaking to critical clients and their design teams. But groupthink, man, for any org, that's a pain in the neck, right? And you got to keep, be cognizant of when that's happening. Too many yes men in the group, and you're in a slippery slope. How do we approach it? How do I approach it, let's say, is to make sure that the team has much more amount of time to say things than I do, and not be as... The thing is...
Open to being challenged.
So that's just a start. In an org, man, many times, if you think, hey, I think this is a good idea, and suddenly it's like it becomes the idea. And you're like, no, I just told you it's a good idea. No, but you said it.
Yeah.
So it has to, and you're like, no, and then you don't realize that subconsciously. And that picks up. And so you just shut up, And that's the reality of it. And one of the ways to there are many ways to address it. And I think a good way is servant leadership, where given a problem on the table, you don't talk. You don't do anything but allow people to mull over it. And all you do at most is hold the pen a little bit, let them move it a bit, and then move away again.
Yeah.
But unless you give that level of safety and security in that space, you won't be able to get people to come out and challenge you and avoid groupthink. And there are more obvious ways: improve diversity in the team, have more women, and simple things like that. That kind of make sure that you don't have groupthink leaking into your. And this can even be for for engagements you have with other agencies. Make sure they balance out what your team is bringing in, right? And small ways in which you can avoid groupthink. Yeah, and I think there are quite a few ways to do it now, especially with the millennials. They don't give a shit. They can tell you to your face to F off, So that's great. You'll love it, So, and from an entrepreneur standpoint, it's the best to just erase your ego and just let these guys give it to you in the face. That isn't right, and it's so much to pick on. Incredible.
Yeah,
they can really run the business. Wholeheartedly.
Hello, everyone. I want to take a moment to share something that's really, really close to my heart. As you know, this podcast isn't just a series of episodes. It's you and I getting mentored by the wisest of the wisest. Each episode is crafted with care, aiming to bring not just stories, but wisdom and insight into the fascinating and sometimes lonely world of entrepreneurship. This is more than just a podcast. It's a personal mentorship session recorded on camera for all of us to learn and grow together. And this is where you come in. If any episode has resonated with you, your subscription or your vote means the world to me. Every subscription lights a fire inside of me and fuels me to keep delivering content that I wish had existed before I started this podcast 2 years ago. So I humbly ask for your support. Please hit pause now and find that subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you're listening to this. It's a small action for you, but it means everything to me. Thank you for being a part of this community and for your support and for choosing to walk this path with me. Stay curious and stay inspired. Thank you so much. Yeah, I've been told something is a good idea, and I didn't believe it. That was a good idea, but it's exactly like your story about like you just said something like, "Oh, that's cool." Suddenly, like everyone's focusing on that. Like, I just said that's cool. Doesn't mean we spend all our resources on your time doing that. What were you doing all of last week? That thing. The moment I said that's cool, that thing left my mind.
Yeah.
Right. So you got to be really careful.
Yeah, you
with
have
that
to.
too. Yeah. No, I do appreciate it. I think. We've tried holding these calls where initially the idea was that Alina gets on a call with our media buyers, our account managers, the people that look after our clients every week, and do some training, which means improve their skill set. And we tried that a year ago. We're like, okay, we should restart that. And she had this idea. She's like, when I do them, they're one-way conversations. I'm doing the training. They're listening, taking notes. She's like, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to call this a jam. And it's just a workshop. So it's, and ever since she started that, she is being the person that speaks the less. And it's great. We're finding out great stuff about like our own process. So her and I worked on a client onboarding process that we have. And it was meticulously planned from day 0 to day 14 of the first days. First 14 days of the client, what happens, what's the wow factors, what's the main thing, what the deadlines for different things are. And it was just her and I jamming on it, and we ran with it for 2 years. Then we kind of just opened this up to the team. We're like, how would you do it? Golden stuff came out of it. Golden stuff that her and I couldn't even think about. They're like, well, you guys are in the trenches. You know much better about these things. And that actually makes more sense. And so we're starting to implement that every week now. And it's coming up with some really good surprises, even to a point of like coming up with new job roles. So we kind of have these Swiss Army knife people, the all-rounders that we have as our account managers. So they do a bit of everything and they do it well. And the more we're getting them to talk, we're starting to see trends of like who's stronger at, let's say, client relationship management, who's stronger at project management as a skill, who's strong at the technical expertise of the ad buying and the media buying. And we're starting to think, okay, now this is giving us clues for like the next phase of the business. Whether we have specialists doing these certain roles, but that wouldn't have happened if people weren't up and talking versus us just telling them every week, like,
absolutely,
all hands meeting. Here are your bosses.
Yeah.
We're telling you what's happening in the company this week, and hope you like it, and see you later. So a lot of that is coming, and that's I think it's really healthy because we want to promote these people to someday take over the business itself. We talked about hiring executives earlier. I would rather groom
absolutely,
executives and bring them up and have their
internal talent always,
right, like groom them and to our best of our abilities, and that's how this give them a bit more ownership even before they have it, and work our way or let them work their way up the organization as much as we build it.
And there are two books, Multipliers and Coaching Habit. Those are both really good. Have you heard of Multipliers?
No. Who's that by?
Liz Wiseman, I think.
Okay.
So that's a good book. And the other one is Coaching Habit.
Coaching Habit.
Yeah. But Multipliers is a good book to give you an understanding of the power of just...
These are so good for like 2024. I'm so excited about next year. Super excited. You're making me so giddy. One more thing about groupthink. I guess this is a segue into like EO. For you, because I feel like, so we were a part of EOA last year. It was our entry point into this whole fascinating network of people. And one of the biggest things that it did for us was that groupthink. When we finally put ourselves, we didn't have a good network of entrepreneurs around us, and we put ourselves there. We're like, oh, there's other ways to think. But, that's something we got out of. But I wanted to ask from you, like, what are some of the most enjoyable parts of EO for you, or what do you get out of it for yourself? Because everyone has different takeaways, right?
So obviously I think first and foremost, the peer-to-peer interaction is at another level with EO, right? And you just feel like you found your tribe, right? A lot of people dealing with the same issues you had, same problems you're having, and so easy access to such fantastic people that allow you to share nuggets, get advice off a phone call, off a WhatsApp chat, right? Epic. But the thing that really draws, fundamentally a critical point for me is just the humility and the genuine interest to give. So you know the pain, so you're happily sharing, so you don't have to do it. You don't have to go through as much pain, right? And that was really amazing about EO. I found people at different levels of the business more than happy to share consistently, right? And meet you, discuss critical points, And I've had several people, Divakar, who's my learning chair, Sanjay Raghunath, several people that I've met, just over a cup of coffee, broke your problem into bits, and for nothing. And just be like, hey, it's all good, and walked away. And you're like, damn, I'd have spent forever trying to understand or do this. I love that. So I think that's the fundamental strength. And then you have your forum, right? Shout out to all of my mates from, Salah, Dana, Selena, Narit, all of them. They're really the backbone, man. Yeah. The forum makes all the difference, right? So when you tight-knit group knows what you're doing, always got your back. Yeah. And I think that's a key part about EO, when you start to realize that you have your own board, your personal board. You come to problems that you can't resolve. And as an entrepreneur, you may not realize how lonely your journey is, and you suddenly don't feel lonely anymore. Because there are a whole bunch of people. Entrepreneurs in general are a weird bunch of people, man. You have to be super weird to go out there and create something that 99% of the people are telling you will not work. Yep. You know what you got to be made of? Some bullshit material, right?
Seriously, right?
Nobody knows what, right? Yeah. So you just get consistent. You keep saying no. People keep saying no, and it has no impact on you. Yeah. Versus any other, because that's how you're built. Yeah. Right? And so you're such a such a flimsy percentage of the population. You feel super lonely out there. But you come to EO or a peer-to-peer group like EO, massive difference. You look straight in the eye and see, he's got the same fire as me. He's freaking weird just as I am.
Yeah.
And that makes the difference. Yeah. And that's when you see, okay, let's do this. And that's a real difference, right? And you can, same kind of conversation that we're having right here. Right? What drives you is to understand how to build that org, the challenges, the pains you're going through. There are people who've already gone through it, openly sharing it with you. People who are going through it that you want to give forward, right? Yeah. That's just a great medium to do that. Yeah. Great platform that brings everybody together for you to be able to do that.
That's exactly it. I mean, the way I think about it is that we are super weird, for sure. As entrepreneurs, we're the only people who are like, hey, let's do something impossible with a high chance of failure.
Exactly.
It's like when you go play board games with people, there are people that are happy playing like Uno and Ludo. And they're like, no, let's play that game that will take us 6 hours to play. I'll lose all my time and I have to think of strategy in that game. And the more nerds you find like yourself is the better, right?
Yes.
Like we were told, so as growing up in the family that I grew up in, entrepreneurship was never a thing. It's something that other people do. It's not for us. We are the worker class, and we're gonna do that. So, son, please, like, don't do this. And the first few years, both Alina and my parents were like, it's just your hobby, right? Like you're gonna be done with this soon, right? This whole business thing. You tried it, right? It's good. Go back into the workforce, because that's how they've seen it, and they've, for the better part, not to knock on people that work, because it's a beautiful way to make money.
Absolutely.
Too. Employment is a beautiful way to make money. There's professionals that are impacting the world in a positive way that I can't even start to think of how they do it, right? So it's a very noble thing, and that's what my dad did. That's what Alina's dad did. They supported their family, and they did that well. But they always told us, like, it's not for us. Don't do this. So we kind of felt that loneliness a lot, because we didn't have family members like that. And then growing up here, like I've Sindhi friends, Gujarati friends, and you can see like they have their network already, right? Like uncles, chachas, aunts, like everyone is like, every Diwali is just business talk, right? Like any event that they're having is just a business talk. So it's really nice to get to find your people in this way. What would you say is the area that you've grown the most personally since joining EO? Yeah.
Difficult to say one area. It's probably been a whole bunch. So one of the key things that I figured out was how you're literally 1 degree of separation away from possibly the authors of the books that you're reading, right? And that's really what I noticed as being part of the learning committee at EO. We literally were 1 degree of freedom away from critical authors, and we got them on board to do events here, and made a big difference. And then that's when I was on first name basis with them, talking to them, arranging schedule and stuff. That's when I realized, man, I didn't actually expect you could be, literally calling the author by name and have his number and actually have a freewheeling conversation with him about stuff if you wanted to. And that's stuff that that really blew my mind at EO, right? So as part of the learning committee, it was great. We had Nero coming in, we have Vern coming in February. In the start, when I first saw it, part of the learning calendar in the beginning of the year, I was doubtful whether we would really be able to do it.
Yeah.
And it's delivered, and the learning chairs, they walk around and they're delivered really well. And that part really shocked me. I didn't expect that. And being a geek, kind of like you, it was a big deal for me, because these are like the superstars you look up to.
If you tell me Tim Ferriss is coming to town, I will pay whatever. Just to say, hey, Tim. I won't even know what to say to him. I'll just be like, hi.
Fanboy moment.
Yeah, exactly. But they also say never meet your heroes.
True. We may not spend too much time with them, but just attend the event and then move on. But
That's awesome, man. No, I'm really glad something like this exists and that you found it as well, as I do with my Memento Mind. I'm gonna switch up. I wanted to ask you about, this is really random, but pricing. So the thing that fascinates me a lot about just running a business is how other people look at pricing, and it's different for physically produced things, different for pure service-based things like ours, and it's different for something that's a mix of both, which I think you guys are a mix of both. So there's that design element to what you do, and then there's a production element to you do. What's your philosophy in general? I'm not asking to break down your margins, but like, how do you think about pricing, knowing that a part of that is intellectual component, like your design team and their design sense and their thought process, inspiration has a value, and then the actual, wood and concrete you put together is like has its own like raw materials, but the way it's done. So how have you evolved your pricing models or the way you think about pricing in general?
So pricing in reality is actually such a beautiful subject, right? Pricing and compensation, I think, are the two things that are so seldom, are not understood so well, and hence seldomly spoken of. On the broad scale, what's pricing? You have usually you have just three categories. All right, you have the economical or low-cost pricing, you have premium, and you have luxury. That's the general overarching sentiment. Yeah. But pricing is so much more than that, right? It's
Bronze,
a differentiation.
silver, gold.
Yeah, it's a differentiation strategy. It's a key part of your differentiation strategy, right? It draws all the way back from how you're showcasing your brand down to your product and displaying it to the customers, right? Pricing essentially is perception. That's all it is, right? Perceived value of product. Okay. The same cup from West Elm and the same cup from IKEA looks the same, but you know what you would pay more for just because there's a West Elm under it, right? Though they might have come from the same manufacturer, the same factory in China, it's perceived value. That perceived value is more psychological than anything else. It's what you've built up in the customer's head. That's all it really is, right? So to consider pricing to be an independent factor, and not to say that we have mastered it. We are far from mastering it as a manufacturing entity. But I'm just speaking of pricing as a concept overall. Is far from being a simple cost plus, which is what everybody does. It's so far more than that. It actually ties into your marketing strategy, how you're communicating with your team, with your customers, and what you're putting out there, right? And in more cases than one, in almost all cases, it's purely psychological. There's nothing wrong with being a low-cost provider, but you're telling the customer something with that. And there's nothing wrong with a luxury provider, right? But you're telling customers something with that too. If you look at, then you might say, okay, but which is an ideal strategy to move in and on? Very complicated. It ties into the broader strategy of your firm. IKEA is considered low cost or average cost in European markets. You got to go pick up the furniture yourself, bring it back, fix it, and put everything up yourself to a large extent. But that's what ties into the whole IKEA brand image. It's not Natuzzi. It's not the other high end out there, right? But that pricing element is strategically designed into the org structure and the business as a whole, right? Which is what you could argue in the other cases too. I could talk a lot about pricing. I should probably stop at some point. But
no, again, we both have a penchant for like depth. So let's go deep into pricing.
IKEA, just moving on the example, is only 7% of the global furniture market. But that 7% holds 70% of the profit margins because they have a flatbed system. They move all furniture flat. Their shipping costs are low, inventory costs are low. They dump all of that cost on the customer who goes home and assembles it on his own, right? You have Apple, which is a much smaller share of the smart phone market, but a lion's share of the profit. A lion's share of the profit. Because the pricing is so much higher than the competition.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why pricing is just perceived value, man. It's just what you put out there and how you structure your business around it.
Yeah.
How can you validate Tony Robbins charging you so much for an hour versus, I don't know, the number one coach in Europe. I don't know how much he charges, right?
Yeah.
Per hour to have a word with you, right? Perceived value. But the perceived value is not something you pull out of your pocket. You build competency around it. And then the market is willing to pay you that
and
money.
it's such a long-term play to do that,
play.
right? Like it's you can't. We think about it, and that's again this is one the reason we're excited for next year is you've put into good words, is to build up the perceived value of our agency and our services and what we stand for, and use it as a differentiating tool to make it a bit more higher end, because we do honestly believe we deserve to be in the upper echelon of what we do. We just don't act like it. We don't behave it.
If you don't believe it, your customer's definitely not going to believe it, man.
Yeah, exactly. Right. We have the small sense that we are better than like a lot, but it's the dogged determination that I'm going to prove to everyone that I'm the best. And I think pricing comes a bit into that. We've slowly increased our pricing over the coming years, but every time we do that, it's not because we've added another line item in the service. It's because we found a reason. And it's always a different reason. Every time we move up our retainer $500, it's like, well, you get this because of blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And every 6 months or every one, we find that new thing that we incorporate into our brand. And that's what, like, when our clients ask us to, right? They're like, oh, you guys are really expensive. The other guys are doing the same thing for a lower budget. At which point I asked him, like, sir, what car do you drive? And he would say, let's say, usually these business owners, they have an Audi or a BMW. I'm like, why don't you drive a Toyota? It gets you from point A to point B. It's the world's best-selling car. It has great service, it works well, mileage, oil consumption. Why don't you drive one? Because you're looking at other things than just the get from point A to B. You're looking to go there in comfort. You're looking to go there in style.
Yeah.
You have a social image to keep up with. You want to say something to yourself. You want to reward something to yourself. I'm like, you want to work with Toyota? Please be my guest. Go work with Toyota. But then you get Toyota results.
Yeah.
You'll get from point A to point B. Sure, they can do that. But I'm not saying we're the luxury cars of things, but
I mean, but
you can't walk into like a Lamborghini shop and be like, hey, you're more expensive than Toyota. You have the same thing. It's a chassis and like there's wheels in it.
There's pistons and an engine, and that's all it really is.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it was Warren Buffett who said, you can only understand the real value of business by seeing what kind of price elasticity they enjoy, right? If they can turn their pricing up, like I think they're a good model for that was Seabiscuit, sea salt. They have a cookie. They have
crackers.
They have some kind of chocolate company that they really love, and for the last several years, it's increased prices by 10% every single year. I think it's Sea something, I forget.
Okay.
Sea's Candies, Sea's Candies, and that's a beautiful business. And that shows how strong your business is because your pricing is flexible enough to keep increasing and people will just pay for it, right? And so two different approaches of looking at pricing. But what pricing actually shows you is how strong you are as a brand if you have the opportunity to charge more than the others and you have the opportunity to keep increasing price, not irresponsibly, obviously. But, that does come with a caveat. When you're an entrepreneur, depending on where you are in your business, you got to be careful about this, right? Yeah. At some point in time, you're trying to stabilize the business, not act stupid with it, So it's only once you start to see that you are in a position to say no to clients, you should do this. If you're just starting out, it's a different ball game. You still got to get. And it's not just for new entrepreneurs; it's a new venture. You don't have enough information, so you need to go out there and study and understand and do what it takes to get that information before you start building a pricing model around it.
Yeah, absolutely. When we first started, we were dirt cheap, and it pissed me off.
Yeah.
Right? Alina's more conservative with pricing. I'm way more aggressive because I've had a background in sales. I've done sales for a good 15 years or so. in different industries, and there always been the high ticket sales, except for this one thing that I did, which was more of a low ticket but high quantity of customers thing. And I've always been trained to take as much as possible, especially in opaque markets. So foreign currency trading. So we do FX trading for corporates under Western Union. So Western Union, most people don't know, had a B2B arm where they do transfers for large companies. And those markets can become opaque when you're selling over-the-counter derivatives. So these are things that are not Googleable. These are products or financial products that I build in my trading software for a particular client situation. And you get to pick your margin based on how you're feeling that day. Right? You're on the phone. It's very close to what they show in Wolf of Wall Street, right?
Really?
Like, pick up the phone and I would get a rate from my internal trader for a certain product that I've built from scratch. And he would give me the rate. And then I'll see like, okay, how am I feeling today? How's the client? Is he liking me today? Is there a competitor knocking on his door recently? Have they been happy about something? Did they get laid last night? Like all these factors kind of went in while I went, XYZ is the price. Should we lock it? Should we go in? Because they don't see the margin. They only see the exchange rate, right? So when you go and exchange currency, right now, you
see the exchange rate.
You see the exchange rate. You don't know what they bought it at, right? And they could have bought that piece of rupee at some other rate 3 years ago when it was much lower, and they're making a killing of this trade off you, right? So I've been trained to be very aggressive, and Alina reminded me quite early. She's like, we need to build our credibility. We need to find our space in the market. We need to build some case studies. I'm like, no, let's go for the highest. But I think she's kept me in check and I've kept her in check because she'd be reluctant to improve pricing. I think another thing I want to get a word out to entrepreneurs, and correct me if I'm wrong, is just every once in a while, just please raise your prices. Like you deserve to. Like a lot of people are shy, especially technical people that become entrepreneurs, right? Like they're very product focused, but they never thought about the business. And they think like, let's not worry the clients. I don't want to explain my pricing, so I'll keep the price low. And how does that work for you? Are you a comfortable guy when every once in a while when you...
Not really. I'm actually kind of, I'd rather go with a low price. Right? And it took me, another book recommendation. Confessions of the Pricing Man by Simon, I forget his full name.
Confessions of the Pricing Man.
So he's literally considered
golden,
the pricing.
Man. This is stuff I've not heard about. I love it.
Is literally considered the pricing guru in the world. So I had to dig deep to really understand that this is true, because I'm usually the kind of guy who is, no, let's keep the pricing low. I'm more Amazonish, which is aggressively drilling down prices every single year consistently. And it took me a while to understand that a huge part of this is just psychology behind pricing. And hey, nobody's asking you to bullshit your customers. If you're offering top quality, for example, for us, our brand promise is customer success. And this is for mega projects. We're talking Neom, Red Sea, the big boys. We are guaranteeing our reputation that if you work with us on any project, your customer success is our vantage point. It's what we come in with. That's our strong point, right? And our customers know that. That's why we manage to work with these institutional clients. For example, Dubai Municipality, we work with them for 25 years, every single year. And even right now, you can take blind testimonials from them. It's because we value that you walk away successful with the project that you've involved us in. That's a lot of promise from our side. And we do bend over backwards to make sure that happens. So we got to be proud of what we offer. And it took a while for me to understand, for the team, for all of us to understand, holy shit, this is true, right? And I think that is a journey that every entrepreneur, as you rightly highlighted, needs to internally go through to realize what you're offering is of a certain value. And that might be considered different than what you consider it to be. Right. And you just got to make sure that if you're grinding yourself to death at low margins, you're not going to survive. You need to be a healthy part of the ecosystem. You need to take home a healthy amount as well as give a healthy amount of value to your clients so the ecosystem persists. If you're going to keep grinding yourself down thinner and thinner, you're not going to survive. And that's
It's
also
a race
bad
to
for
the
you.
bottom.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's bad for your clients too, who are
Yeah.
relying on your service.
Yeah.
It's bad for your team members who are relying on growth with you, right? So you need to understand that it's a delicate balance point.
It's also motivation, right? So if you've, as you said, like if you want to keep that ecosystem alive of you being able to do this until you decide not to be in the business anymore, you need to motivate yourself. And you can motivate yourself with a better lifestyle by getting paid more. You can get paid more by charging more or getting more clients, either one. And also your business deserves it. Your business deserves growth. Your business deserves to impact new customers, other customers. Your business deserves to give your existing customers better service, better products, better everything. And you can achieve that. So pricing is not just a greedy way to make more money. Mm-hmm. It's actually to improve either your life, your employees' life. So maybe you can use that increase in prices to give more bonuses, to give better salaries, to give better benefits to people,
Absolutely.
to hire better people that are more expensive in the market, and then to invest in the future growth of your company so that you're not living paycheck to paycheck as a business too. So it's not just evil to raise prices. So when I see something that's a price has been raised, usually I'm the one arguing at home. I don't know if you do this, but with my mom will be like, oh, there is a price of this. I'm like, they're a business. They need to increase the prices. This is how things, how like weird it is to talk to like non-business people about pricing, especially when they're complaining about like, oh, ye itne ka hota tha. I was like, please, for God's sake, let's talk about inflation. Let's talk about salaries. Let's talk about this. Like, they have to pay rent. You know how much rent is for this shop? Yeah. Like, of course they're going to raise prices. Like, it doesn't shock me when like some sort of inflation happens in the market, whether it's macro level or business level inflation, right? So I think your business deserves a bit of it, but again, at the same time, don't take advantage of your customers. Yeah. And who they are, because that shit bites you back too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think end of the day, do right by all stakeholders in your business. You know, whether it's team members, whether it's customers, whether it's suppliers, because in the long term, and that's something that I've learned from my mentor as well, is you need to coexist because you're in for the long game. You know, as the infinity game, as they call it, right? Yeah. So you could literally, if you play the game as if you're going to play it forever, how would you play it, right? And given those circumstances, you need everybody to be good and okay.
Yeah.
And that's necessary. You could do, and that's the reason why in many negotiations, it's also not a bad thing to leave some money on the table because you want them to come back to you when there's another deal. Mm-hmm. You gyp them one time, once he's out the door, you think he's going to come back for you? No. He's going to remember you as being this really aggressive dude. It's a different mindset, depends. There are people who are like sharp deal makers and love it.
Yeah.
My mindset's a little different. Same. And the idea is to leave some money on the table, make sure that they come back to you the next time around. Yeah. And the same thing goes on how you run the ecosystem. And pricing is a critical part of it. Where I don't go in and expect massive increase in prices and your customer will accept it. No, but you have to be educated about it over time, steadily, piece by piece. But make sure you're adding value and make sure that you're doing decent margins that allow you to sustain.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, like I like how you're saying it because it's almost like don't play games with your customer.
Yeah.
Right, with pricing. Like don't use this as a way to play games with them. So when we propose our prices, I don't start with a price that's 20% higher and then make them beg for a discount and then give them that fake discount because that for me is like playing a game. I don't like playing games. It's not worth anyone's time. So I've already proposed my lowest ever possible. So that helps me in a few ways. I don't do negotiations in that case because anything lower than that, even though the client promises, like, because of me, I'll open so many doors for you. I've seen that to be not true in my experience, at least. People who talk that game don't usually play it. And people who don't talk about it are the ones that give me the most referrals. And I've seen that correlation. I don't know if there's causation behind it. But I've seen people do that game thing, right? Like, oh, I'll just charge 20% more. And I have to tell people, like, I know you've been dealing with other people. This is Dubai. This is how they played. I wasn't playing a game. I gave you my lowest price. Yeah,
and there's a lot of cultural nuances too around it.
Yeah.
For example, in the Chinese market, the Indian market, a Pakistani market, 20, 30, 40% discount, the customer's super happy.
Yeah.
Try to give that in the American market, he's
Yeah.
going to be like, this guy's shady.
Yeah, exactly.
Something is wrong.
Something
here.
is wrong.
I do not want to do this deal.
Yeah.
So a lot of nuances around that.
Yeah.
What is considered a healthy discount, and it will make the fuel customer happy that I walk away with a good deal. There's a certain element of that.
Yeah.
Is very different.
Yeah.
If you give that kind of discount in different markets, they're just gonna be like, all right, something shady here. I won't buy this.
Exactly. Like they've been cutting corners somewhere. I know, because we spent 13 years in Toronto, right? Alina and I. And when we came back here 5 years ago, we had a reverse culture shock. So we're, because we're born and raised here, but by the time we settled in Canada, we became Canadians in how we think. And by the time we came back and we, like all these nuances you're talking about, we're like, but those are not our Canadian values. We need to talk about, like, why are people haggling so much over here? Do we have to haggle too? And it's just games. I don't like playing games. I just want to provide value. As you say, impact, I want to give value to the business. Like the impact that we make is help our clients make more money. Like that's at the bottom line of things. And if we can do that, by not destroying relationships and like playing these games, and so be it. We have about 10 minutes to wrap up. So I have to carefully pick questions because I can talk to you for fucking ever. And there's way too much over here that I want to talk to you about. So I'll have to find out where to go next. Oh, let's see. Let's try this one. Although I do think this is going to be longer than 10 minutes. But let's give it a shot. Let's see how much we can cover.
Okay.
Pathological obsession with the truth.
Ooh, okay.
What does that mean to you?
So in the, you could speak about it in several contexts. But the idea is, a good popular way of looking at it is Ray Dalio's radical transparency, right? If you are completely open book in the way that you act, behave, it's so much easier for your team and your stakeholders, immediate family, friends, everyone to understand who you are. And in the org, it's so easy to translate those messages across the org, right? You will be able to achieve much more in a shorter duration of time, right? Because there's so much lost in translation, right? So that obsession of truth with the truth comes from that factor. To be able to continuously put yourself out there, possibly in uncomfortable positions, but staying with the truth because that's what you want to communicate in the long term. You're genuinely, you'll be able to achieve more. And within an org, it's very easy because there's so many things lost in translation. If you can make sure that the truth is unfiltered, straight from you, straight through the org, it's so much faster to get everybody moving in the same direction and growing further, right? And so it definitely makes sense both from a entrepreneurship mindset, right? But of course, this has to resonate with you deeply because there's so many layers to how people live today. It's counterintuitive to a lot of what you mentioned, for example, right? Social media obsession and so on and so forth. But in an org, I think it's fundamental. But it's also fundamental to solving a business problem, right? If you're not obsessed with drilling down, peeling the onion, layer by layer, you're not going to know what the truth is. And there's so many ways in today to package it and, shrink wrap it and beauty wrap it, what have you, that it gets lost. And you're not going to be able to solve the problem. All you're doing is delaying your ability to solve the problem.
Whether it's internal or with the client.
Internal, external, or a general business problem. How do I get this product at this price point? How do we manufacture this product at this price point? How do we actually make this venture profitable? What's missing? Where are the customers for it? Maybe we are being the biggest idiots. That's highly possible. It turns out also right quite a few times. But unless you're able to bring that to the table, as they call it, skinny dipping, unless you're willing to go skinny dipping, saying, this is the fundamental problem. It could be me, it could be the issue. So that's where it stems from. And I think that's, it's not a comfortable route, and you have to be tuned to it for it to resonate. And if you are tuned to it, it is it's the most optimized route, I believe.
That's the dichotomy, right? It's simple, not easy.
Yeah.
right? Like working with the truth is simple, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
But because as you said, it makes things easier in the long term, right? Over time, like if you've never had to sugarcoat yourself and said exactly what is on your mind, like there's nothing lost in translation because you've been pretty aware. Like and this has saved us a lot, and I agree with you on these points. It's saved, now that I'm thinking about it, in certain client conversations, right? We reach a sticky point, and Alina and I sit and discuss. After 30 minutes of babbling nonsense, we'll be like, hey, why don't we just go with what is actually the situation? So if in normal words, if we had no filter, how would we describe the situation? It's this. Okay, to this situation, what caused it? It's this. So then what's the solution? It's this. When we go with that, you don't have to prepare a script to talk to the client because it's coming straight from the heart and from the brain. You're not filtering yourself. You're going to the thing and you're checking your assumption. And out of that, you get respect.
Yeah.
And maybe you even get the like, hey, you guys are thinking about this all wrong, which is movement, which is progress, right?
Exactly.
Like, at least now you can recalibrate. I wonder how many of your 4 a.m. meditation sessions ends up reaching in some truths inside your head too. Would you say like when you get up after 20 minutes, you're like, oh, I see that clearly now. The truth behind something. I was the wrong one.
No, I wouldn't say I've had that kind of an epiphany, but yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you, you know what? Because we have limited time, this might be a good way to wrap up. We'll have to bring you back because there's so much to talk to you about. But you told me that you speak Kannada.
Yes.
Am I saying that right? Kannada?
Kannada, yeah.
Kannada.
Yeah, the second one's absolutely right.
Kannada, okay. Yeah. You're going to teach me some Kannada. I love learning phrases in different languages. Okay, so you're going to tell me how I can say, that's awesome in Kannada. And I'm going to repeat
God.
and
I
see
may
if
not have the right lingo.
Because I want to learn how to say it too. So tell me the word and we'll see. When you see something like, oh, that's cool, or like, that's awesome.
How would you say that's awesome? Because, Kannada is from Bangalore, right?
Yeah.
And Bangalore is kind of a lot of English words in there.
It's like slang.
Yeah. And so awesome is kind of awesome. I mean, you can say the traditional, that's nice, chanagide.
Chanagide.
Yes,
okay.
Chanagide. But I would say slang today, Bangalore folks would probably say awesome, straight up.
They say awesome? Okay.
Yeah.
What about that's crap or that's rubbish? You got to have one for that.
Well, so my knowledge of Kannada is not so much slang. The linguistic right way is chanagide, chanagilla.
Chanagila.
Chanagila. That's not good. No good. Not good.
Yeah,
Chanagila.
no good?
Yeah.
Chanagila. I like that. Okay. This is not slang, but I really want to learn this in case I need to use this one. Give me my money now. How would I say that in Kannada?
Well, that's going to be nanhana nankodi.
Nanhana?
Nanhana nankodi.
Nanhana nankudi.
Yeah, give my money back. Yeah.
I like that. Nanhana nankudi.
Yeah.
Okay, I will use that. Okay, now let's do the reverse. I have some slang. You can guess what these mean in English. What does yappa mean?
Yappa means wow, or it's kind of like wow, or in a may not necessarily be in a
good way.
In a good way, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What about dabba?
That's a box, or it can also mean. I think it translates to the Hindi slang. Dabba means. I don't believe you. It's kind of slang for that. Like, go to hell. It's kind of like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Here's one that I find really funny. Ayyo, just miss.
Ayyo?
Just miss.
No, ayyo means, oops. It's what ayyo literally kind of translates to. But just miss? No, I do not know what that means.
I guess this is a new trend of like mixing the English word. Do you know any Kannada?
No, I don't know Kannada. I know a little bit of Telugu and Tamil.
Yeah?
I do like my native language.
Is Telugu like Tulu or no?
No,
They're very different?
Every language is different.
Okay.
Quite different.
I guess I have way too many languages. But I want to wrap up with one final question. Now that I know how to say "give me my money now" in Kannada, if you had a billboard, and this is a question copied straight from Tim Ferriss. Sorry, I keep using your question every time. But if you had a billboard Sheikh Zayed Road, millions of people driving by every day. What would you put on there? And it can't be a commercial statement, but if there's something that you want people to read every day, could be entrepreneurs, could be non-entrepreneurs, could be just general people. What would you put on there?
This too shall pass.
Deep.
That's all it is.
I like that one.
Whatever the hell you're going through, it will pass. Including yourself.
Even the good stuff.
Even the good stuff, even the bad stuff.
Yeah, I know. That's what man, it takes so much courage to believe that when you're down and out.
That is true.
Because you might know it, this too shall pass through experience. You know, you may not when you're 20 years old, but you know, the older you get, the more you understand the truth behind that. But remembering it at the time you need it the most is the hardest thing, right?
It really is. That's why a lot of the textbook stuff is easy to deal with frontline. It's the human emotional aspect of it that makes it so challenging. If you could just separate the emotion aspect of it and deal with it, be a lot easier.
Yeah.
But it's the little brain inside you going, the monkey.
Really, the monkey, man. Taming the monkey is like 90% of my day, really. Because, you know, the freedom you have as an entrepreneur is real and it's beautiful, and it's really messy on your brain too, right? Because you are the master of your own destiny.
Yeah.
Finally, you always wanted to be that. You know, as a past employee, like, can't one day when I have my own way. I didn't realize what a trap it could be sometimes, right? Because like now you have to decide. There's a fork in the road, and it's not two-pronged.
Yeah.
It's 17,000 pronged. And depending on the direction you take, your life can end. You know, you'll be a disgrace. You'll be out on the streets. But no, man, I loved having you here. There's so much to take away. All these books, The One Thing, Multipliers, Coaching Habit, the movie about the Seabiscuit. I'm going to rewatch 3 Idiots tonight. Pricing, I love talking about that. I loved how you said there's no one way to entrepreneur.
Yeah.
There's so much wisdom trapped in these 2 hours. I'm jealous of the people listening to it too and taking notes. But what Alina and I do is we both kind of listen to this afterwards and kind of take notes and discuss with each other like nerds. Like, what did you learn? Oh, I learned this, and no, this has been really helpful.
I'm not sure if there was that much value, but you're being really kind. Thank you.
No, it was because we're in a transition period, as I told you, and I think like the universe just conspired to bring you here. But the things that you were talking about are the things that are truly things in our consideration. And I love the way that you've been phrasing things too, because language has the power to unlock your own action or next action too, right? And you naming things or phrasing things in a certain way gets you. I don't know if that happens to you, but when I read a book and a phrase of something that I've heard in some other way, and they just change the phrase, and that just unlocks.
Jumps out, yeah.
It just unlocks you in a different way. So thank you for that.
Pleasure.
Any final words before we wrap up? Anything that you want to tell the audience?
Well, nothing in particular. I think it's been an absolute pleasure being here. Thank you so much for having me. And if there's any value at all in what we've discussed, it's probably because you're great in bringing the juice out.
Oh, come on. That's me blushing. Thanks. That's far too kind. Far too kind. Hopefully we can do this again.
Sure. It's been fun.
Thanks, buddy.
Thank you,
so
man.
much.
I appreciate it.
Cheers.